So in this video today, we're going to go over dividing rational expressions. So by the end of today, you should be able to say I can divide rational expressions. So our first term here is a complex fraction contains one or more. So we're going to write complex fraction. A complex fraction contains one or more fractions in its numerator, its denominator, or both. Okay, so let's talk about what we mean by that. I'm going to basically show y'all an example of what I'm referring to here. So for example, I mean if I have a 2x plus 2 over x squared minus 3x minus 4, and then I take all of that and put it over another fraction, like 4x minus 8 over x minus 4. This is what we call a complex fraction, right? Okay, so now let's talk about what we have here. Do y'all notice this bar right here? So remember, a fraction bar is the same as division, right? So a complex fraction is really just a complicated way of writing a division problem with rational expressions. That's what it is. So dividing rational expressions is just like dividing fractions. So we're hopefully going to remember how to do that in just a second. So when we talk about dividing, we're gonna keep our first term. We're gonna change from division to multiplication, and then we're gonna flip the second term. So do y'all remember keep, change, flip? Well, that's something you should have learned in algebra, or actually in middle school at some point. Okay, so we're gonna keep our first term, which is 5x to the fourth over 8x squared y squared. We're gonna change from division to multiplication. So I'm going to put a dot there. And then we're going to flip. We're going to flip the second term. So we're going to do 8y to the third over 15. Now, when I do these types of problems, I like to put like terms with like terms. So I'm going to do 5 times 8, that's what's on top, and 8 times 15. With my students, I talked to them about reducing this. So 5 goes into 15 3 times, right? So we got a 1 up there. And then we got 8 and 8 cancel each other out. So, right, this would simplify to be 1/3. Now, you could multiply across top and the bottom, and you get 40 over 120. Well, 40 over 120 still reduces to be 1/3. Now, we're going to deal with our x's. So we got an x to the fourth on top, and we have an x to the second on the bottom. Remember that if it's on the bottom, we're going to subtract it, right? So this is going to be x squared. Then we have our y's, right? So we got y to the third on top, and we got subtracting 2 from it again because it's in the denominator. So this is just going to be y, right? So we have a 3 on the bottom, and we have an x squared and a y squared, which are both going to go on top. So our answer is going to be x squared y over 3. Now, if we were going to talk about excluded values, here we would set our factors equal to 0. So notice that we have an 8x squared y squared times 15. That's all what was on the bottom. Well, if that was the case, then our excluded values would be x could not equal 0, because if x equaled 0, then everything on the bottom would be equal to 0. And y could not be equal to 0, right? Again, because if y was equal to 0, then we multiply that y squared times everything in the bottom, it all becomes 0. Okay? So this was our answer. All right, so on this one again, we're going to keep, change, flip, right? So we're going to keep what's on top, b plus 3 over b squared plus 6b plus 9. We're going to change from, this is division right here, right, y'all? So we're going to change it to multiplication. And then we're going to flip the bottom. So we're going to get b squared minus 9 over b plus 2. So you should notice that there's some things that I could factor here. So I can factor this term right here, and I can factor this one. So we're going to do the b plus 3 on top, and then we're going to talk about how do we factor this term. So we take the square root of b squared, that's b. We take the square root of the 9, that's 3. And if you recall, if I have the difference of two squares, then I'm going to do plus and minus here. So those are all the terms that are on top now, right? Because when we're multiplying, we multiply across the top and we multiply across the bottom. Now we want to factor this term, okay? So here again, I notice that b squared's, okay, so that's take square root of b squared, so that's b. And this term is a perfect square as well. Do you notice that? So this is going to be 3 and 3. And this time, if the middle term, remember, if the middle term is b times 3 times 2, which is 6b, then this is going to be b plus 3 squared. Well, in this case, we're just going to write it twice, okay? We're going to carry down that b plus 2 over here. Okay? Now we're going to talk about what's repeated. So we got a b plus 3 there and a b plus 3 there. A b plus 3 there and a b plus 3 there. So what do we have left? That right there. So our answer is going to be b minus 3 over b plus 2. Now, if it asked us what values would be excluded, then we would set these factors equal to 0. So we would do b plus 3 equals 0. So b could not equal negative 3. We would also do the b plus 2 equals 0. So b could not equal negative 2. Now, what does that really mean? That means if I put one of those values, negative 3 or negative 2, in the denominator, then it's going to give me 0 for what I got. Okay? So our next one is example 3. So here again, now you guys, some of you had this, some of you didn't have this. If you didn't have it, then it's an extra example, so you can watch me doing it. So once again, we are going to keep what's on top, change the sign, and then we're going to flip what was on the bottom. So we're going to end up with the x squared plus 2x. Oops, hold on one second. Plus, plus 2x minus 3. I don't know what it's doing, y'all. And then we got the x plus 4 on the bottom because we flipped it, right? So now we're going to factor, okay? So hopefully you guys can see that we can factor a 4 out of this. It's going to be x plus 4. We're also going to factor this other term. So this is going to be x and x, okay? And then we're looking at the factors of 3, which would be 3 and 1, right? Well, obviously, if that's a negative 3, one of them's got to be negative, one's got to be positive, right? Well, this one's going to be positive and this one's going to be negative because it's a positive 2x, okay? Then here we can factor out a 2. That's going to give us x plus 3. And then we still have our x plus 4 that we can multiply. Okay, so now we're going to look for our like terms. Well, first of all, I noticed that there's a 4 over a 2. Well, this can be reduced, right, to 2 up here. We have an x plus 4 there and an x plus 4 there. We have an x plus 3 there and an x plus 3 there. So the only thing that we're left on top is 2 times x minus 1. Here again, if we were to talk about our excluded values, x plus 3 equals 0. So x cannot equal negative 3. X plus 4 equals 0. So x cannot equal negative 4. If the problem asked us about the excluded values. I'm just showing this to you guys so that you have the extra information on it. So when you asked about it on the quiz on Monday, you know what it's asking for. Okay, on this one, again, this one you guys are supposed to do on your own. So go ahead and do this one and then come back to me when you're done. So here again, we're going to keep change flip. So we're going to keep the first term. We're going to change to multiplication, and then we're going to flip the other term. So it's going to be x minus 1 over x. Now, on top, I got x plus 1 times x minus 1. And I can factor this term right here. So hopefully you guys remember, take square root of this, and I take square root of this. I'm going to get x and 1 plus and minus, right? And then we have an x, okay? So now we're trying to see what terms cancel out. This cancels out right there. Whoops, sorry, right there. And then this one cancels right here. So what are we left with? A 1 over an x. Here again, if I were to ask you what values had to be excluded, x plus 1 equals 0. So x cannot equal negative 1. x minus 1 equals 0, so x cannot equal 1, and then x equals 0, so x cannot equal 0. So I'm just trying to keep you guys in. It says here that we are using all defined terms, but I want you guys to see how to do these. So here's our next one, number 5. Let's see if you guys can do this one. Pause the video, come back to me when you're done. So again, first step here is keep, change, flip, right? So we're going to keep the first term, x squared, or the top term. Then we're going to multiply instead of divide. We're going to flip it. 2x squared minus 10x. And this was not on some of y'all's notes either, so this is an extra one I added just for some extra practice, okay? So now we're just going to factor everything, okay? So on the top here, we've got an x and an x, right? So we're thinking of the factors of -8 that add up to be -2. Well, obviously it's going to be 4 and 2. Well, which one's going to be negative? The bigger one, because -4 plus 2 is indeed -2, right? Over here, we can factor out a 2x, can't we? So when we do that, 2x out of 2x squared is x. -10x divided by 2x is -5. Again, we're going to factor this one. So we have an x and an x again. Now we're thinking of what are the factors of 15? 1 and 15 and 3 and 5, right? So I'm going to put my 3 and my 5 here. And then if it's a -2, obviously the bigger term has to be negative. The smaller term has to be positive, right? Okay. Then here again, we're going to talk about what can we factor out of 2x squared minus 8x. Again, we can factor out a 2x, right? If we factor 2x out of 2x squared, we get x. If we divide -8x by 2x, we get -4. So here we go again. We're now going to look at what terms can we cancel out. We got an x minus 4 here, and x minus 4 there. We don't have an x plus 2 on the bottom. We do have a 2x and a 2x, right? And then we have an x minus 5 and an x minus 5. So we take what's left on top and we put it over what was left on the bottom. Now, if we were to talk about the excluded values on this one, there's more of them, right? So x plus 3 equals 0, so x cannot equal -3. X minus 5 equals 0, so x cannot equal 5. 2x equals 0, divide both sides by 2, so x cannot equal 0. And then x minus 4 equals 0, so x cannot equal +4, okay? Again, I'm just doing that to keep it refreshed in y'all's minds. So here comes the one that was the most difficult. Actually, no, that was 5. Again, sorry, 6. So here again, we're going to keep, change, flip, okay? That's our first step. So x to the 4th minus 9x squared over x squared minus 4x plus 3. Change it to multiplication. Put this on top. Now, every one of these terms can be factored, y'all. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is see what I can factor out of x to the 4th minus 9x squared. I notice I can factor an x squared out of both of those. So that's going to give me x squared minus 9. And then what can I can factor x squared minus 16. Hopefully you guys remember this one, right? This is going to be x plus 4, x minus 4, right? Now when we talk about the bottom, let's see what we can do here. I've got an x, right? And an x. What are the factors of 3, guys? 1 and 3, right? Now, if that's a -4, don't both of these have to be negative? Okay, now on this last term, again, I see that I can factor an x squared out of that first, right? So I'm going to do x squared plus 2x minus 8. So there's two terms left that I could factor, guys. I can factor this term right here and this term right here, right? So we got to factor those some more. So that's what we're going to do next. So we got x squared. What is the factors of this? Hopefully y'all remember. We've done this a couple times. This is going to be x plus 3 and x minus 3. Then we got our x plus 4 and our x minus 4. All of that is going to be over x minus 1, x minus 3. We've got our x squared down here. Now we got to factor this x squared plus 2x minus 8, right? So we know that it's going to be x and x. And what are the factors of 8 that when subtracted, negative 8, sorry, that when subtracted would give you a positive 2? I know it's going to be 4 and 2, right? Which one's going to be positive? Which one's going to be negative? Obviously, it's got to be plus 4 minus 2 because that's what gives us a positive 2. Now we can start talking about which values can we x out, right? So I got an x squared here and an x squared there. I got an x, I don't have an x plus 3 in the bottom, but I do have an x minus 3. And then I have an x plus 4 and an x plus 4. So what do I have left? So I have x plus 3, x minus 4 over x minus 1, x minus 2. So hopefully by now y'all can see the pattern of the things that can't go in the bottom too. So this one right here would be x cannot equal positive 1. This one would be x cannot equal positive 3. This is x cannot equal 0. X cannot equal negative 4. And x cannot equal 2. Those would be all of our excluded values for this problem, okay? All right, last one. Left an easy one for last. Okay? So keep, change, flip. That's our first step, right? So we're going to keep the x squared over the 4. We're going to change the sign and we're going to flip it. When I do these, I like to do these by like terms. So I do the 12 over the 4. That's 3. Then I do x squared, and I subtract the 4 because it's in the denominator, so this is going to be x to the negative 2. And then I do my y squared minus 1, so this is y, right? So now we're going to put them all together. We got a 3 and a y that are going to go on top, and the x squared is going to go on the denominator, right? Again, if we were thinking about excluded values, it would be x cannot equal 0. And y cannot equal 0, because if either one of those were 0, it would make the whole denominator 0.